Centerpiece, the show dedicated to fighting on the front lines of political hypocrisy, exposing the lies and false promises of our leadership. And now your host, the voice of reason, Nick Messer.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Centerpiece. I am Nick Messer, the voice of reason. I was away last week. I do have a full-time job. I don't do this as my full-time job. Unfortunately, I would love to be able to do so. But with that being said, my work schedule has me every other week working at this time on Saturday evenings. So Mina is going to be stepping in temporarily on those weeks to help make sure that we keep the show going instead of having dead weeks. So, got a lot of stuff to cover tonight here on the show. We've got the HR 127. We've got dealings with AOC. I can't believe I have to say this once again. Kyle Rittenhouse is back in the news. A lot of other things that we need to talk about this evening as far as how things are going. We are now, let's see here. Pull up my calendar real quick. We are now roughly... We're 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks into the Biden administration. And Biden already has an astronomical number of executive orders. Excuse me. I mean, even CNN is commenting about how Biden is blowing his predecessors out of the water with the number of executive actions. And I mean, if we really go back and look at it, Biden even commented when Donald Trump started signing executive orders and actions that only a dictator legislates by executive order and executive action. And Biden is now up to 40-something executive orders and actions. That's almost as many executive orders and actions as Donald Trump signed in his entire first year. But yet Donald Trump was the dictator. Donald Trump was the authoritarian and he was the tyrant. Donald Trump signed executive orders locking in the price of EpiPens and insulin so that people could afford them. Joe Biden signs an executive order revoking that. Essentially overnight increasing the cost of insulin for those who need it back to where it was prior to the Trump administration. So now people are back to not being able to afford the life-saving medication that they previously had. Another thing I want to get into tonight, Time Magazine. Has anybody seen the article? Has anybody read the article? I tell you, get out there, get on the internet, pull it up. It was an article that was written by Molly Ball on February 4th. For Time Magazine. It's called The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. Because I don't know at this point that anything could save the 2020 election. It was an absolute train wreck every step of the way. It was a nightmare. About the only thing that she did get correct in her op-ed article that Time Magazine posted was that the nation was braced for chaos. and that in a poll before Election Day, 75% of those people polled, her words are 75% of Americans. I will say 75% of the people polled, because we've had discussions on this show about polls and how accurate they can be. 75% of people polled voiced concern about violence on Election Day. It goes on in the article to state, and she says that there was a type of unspoken agreement between big businesses and the labor. There was a joint statement from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO that was published on Election Day. She doesn't cite or quote anything from that particular statement, and I really didn't have enough time before the show in order to be able to hop in and pull that up so that I could look into it myself, so I'm not going to try to quote it. But essentially she said it was a handshake between business and labor and was just one component of a vast cross-partisan campaign to protect the election. An extraordinary shadow effort dedicated not to winning the vote, but to ensuring it would be free and fair, credible, and uncorrupted. For more than a year, a loosely organized coalition of operatives scrambled to shore up Americans' institutions as they came under simultaneous attack from a remorseless pandemic and an autocratically inclined president. Though much of this activity took place on the left, it was separate from the Biden campaign and crossed ideological lines with crucial contributions by nonpartisan and conservative actors. There you have it, folks. She goes on to say their work touched every aspect of the election. They got states to change voting systems and laws and help secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding. They fended off voter suppression lawsuits, recruited armies of poll workers, and got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. They successfully pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation and use data-driven strategies to fight viral smears. They executed national public awareness campaigns that helped Americans understand how the vote count would unfold over the days or weeks, preventing Trump's conspiracy theories and false claims of victory from getting more traction. After Election Day, they monitored every pressure point to ensure that Trump could not overturn the result. All the things, that right there. Time magazine has published an article in which the left has come right out and said it. They come right out and said it. They intentionally worked behind the scenes to influence the election. Something we all knew, and they denied wholeheartedly the entire time. No, we wouldn't do something like that. That wasn't happening. That wasn't going on. Trump's crazy. He's deranged. Now that there's no chance at all in overturning any of this at all whatsoever, kind of like the situation with OJ. Once it was determined that he was going to be free to go. He's all but admitted to the murders. And now here we have the left all but admitting that they essentially stole the election from Donald Trump. Under the guise of they wanted to make sure that it was free and secure. Yeah. The only thing the left cares about at this point is that the only free and secure thing that they know is agree with my ideals. If you do not agree with them, they will cancel you. Or they'll try like hell to cancel you. It's absolutely ridiculous at this point. I can't believe we actually have to continue talking to it. Pull the article up. And then she goes on to say, get this, the president spent months insisting that mail ballots were a democratic plot and the election would be, quote-unquote, rigged. Your article that you just wrote is saying that it was rigged. You can't write an article and say that it was a bipartisan response and that it was an attempt to make elections free and clear, and then proceed throughout the article to just incessantly bash the losing candidate. Because that doesn't work that way. So here we have another situation where Donald Trump makes a claim, everyone says that he's crazy, and then a few weeks down the road, it finally comes to light that he actually wasn't crazy. He was right the entire time, but it just gets swept underneath the rug. Nobody pays attention to that. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Molly Ball goes on to also in the article say that Donald Trump was trying to steal the election that he'd lost. Except for you have already admitted that you influenced the election. According to her article, the architect of the whole movement was Mike Podhorzer. Just get out there, go look it up. I think you'll be absolutely shocked as to what was actually going on in that particular situation. Give that one a full read. Moving on. Like I said at the start of the episode, I can't believe that we are back on this once again. By the Associated Press for the Chicago Tribune, headline reads, Judge sets hearing for next week on whether to arrest or increase bail for Kyle Rittenhouse. Yes, they're going after him once again, because now the election's over and things are starting to quiet down. The GOP is imploding in on itself, so they need to get in there and check it out and see what is going on and try to stir up some more stuff for you to pay attention to. So they're going back to the old standby there. The Kyle Rittenhouse, the white supremacist, white nationalist murderer from Kenosha, Wisconsin. So, They are going to hold an additional hearing next week on whether they're going to arrest or increase the bail for Kyle Rittenhouse for the crimes that he is accused of. The prosecutors alleged that Rittenhouse has moved out of his Antioch, Illinois apartment he shared with his mother after he posted mind you, he had to raise a $2 million cash bond. Wisconsin, well, I'll say this one more time. Wisconsin does not have a bail bond system. So in order for you to bail out of jail in the state of Wisconsin, you must post the entire amount of your bail. So the courts have already taken $2 million from Kyle Rittenhouse for him to get out of jail as it is now. And now they want to say, we want to put him back in jail and charge him another $200,000. All right. They want to increase his bond by 10%. Which is absolutely ridiculous. Once again, they filed for the motion because they said he moved and he didn't notify the court with his new address. The attorneys countered what the prosecutors filed, saying that Rittenhouse has been receiving threats and moved into an undisclosed safe house after he got out of jail. They filed documents with the court as showing they offered to disclose they offered to reveal the address to the prosecutors, but they wanted the prosecutors to keep it secret because him and his family have been getting incessant threats because Kyle Rittenhouse has already been tried and found guilty in the court of public opinion. So you want to call Kyle Rittenhouse a murderer because he got involved into a situation in which he kind of looks like, you call him a vigilante, you call him a white supremacist and everything like that. But then you've got these people that are out there that are trying to take justice into their own hands instead of letting the courts handle it, and they want to go after Kyle Rittenhouse themselves, but that's okay. They wanted to keep the address from Kyle Rittenhouse secret to the public. Law enforcement could law enforcement would have the address so they would know where he was at, and the prosecutors and the courts would know where he was at, but it wouldn't be public, and they want it kept from public record. And Assistant District Attorney Thomas Binger refused. He says the address is public record. So Rittenhouse's attorney said, then we're not giving you the address. Here's his P.O. box. But Binger replied that a post office box doesn't satisfy the conditions of Rittenhouse's bail. So they didn't get enough out of him the first time with his bail. So they turn around and want to throw him back in jail and take more from him. You're absolutely right, Jason. I don't think they can. I will say this. They do care if Kyle gets hurt or killed. I believe they want it to happen. That's what they want to happen. They believe, they know that none of these charges are actually going to stick as long as he's got at least one sane person on his jury. When they take one look at the videos of the situation that he was in, they're not going to convict him of murder. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to convict him of murder or attempted murder. Everything he did was in self-defense. So, they're trying to set it up as a situation where they can have Kyle punished for what he did. How dare he stand against them? Yeah, and I'm sure it probably that it's part of a smear campaign. But see, they don't need to make him look bad in order to get a conviction. He's already been convicted and found guilty in the court of public opinion. Because even conservatives have him convicted, saying he shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have been there. Once again, going into arguments that have absolutely zero bearing on the situation at all whatsoever. All right? Because you claim that Kyle shouldn't have been there, but yet there was an 8 p.m. curfew, so no one should have been there. All right? You can't use the argument on one side and not use it and not apply it to the other side also, because that's not equality. So, but yeah, I mean, if we want to take and argue the Rittenhouse situation from a reasonable aspect, yeah, maybe he shouldn't have been there. All right. But that doesn't change the fact that he was. And whether or not he should have been there, you're right, public opinion shouldn't matter. And the jury does. But see, the jury's supposed to remain impartial and unbiased. That's why it's supposed to be a jury of your peers. So, getting out and trying to start a smear campaign like this in order to influence potential jury members, I do believe, if it can be proven, is illegal. Because that's essentially stacking the deck against him. I mean, you're not going to get an impartial jury. It's just not going to happen. The case for Kyle Rittenhouse and everything, it's such a matter of, it's out there in the public, it's nationwide, it's worldwide. You're not going to find, I don't think you'll find 12 people across the United States that has no idea who he is. Unless they've been living under a rock. For the past, what's it been now, a year? Since this all happened? Not quite a year. Mind you, this all happened at a protest for Jacob Blake, who was an armed man who was shot by police after telling the police he was going to the car to get a gun. After the police tried to restrain him physically, they tried tasing him twice and he still continued to fight. His children were in the car, and he was at the home of his ex, whom he wasn't supposed to be at, because no, I did 100%, Jason. I do totally understand your point. It's not that I'm missing it. The point that I'm saying is that that's not part of the case. So it's not admissible to court, regardless of whether or not he, quote-unquote, obeys the law. There's a lot of people who break the law but don't go out to commit murder, all right? Because if you go down if you break the speed limit, you've broken the law. If you don't wear your seatbelt behind the wheel while you're in a vehicle, you've broken the law. So a lot of things people do to break the law, but they don't go out and commit murder. Trying to say that he doesn't follow the law because he didn't disclose his address, any halfway decent defense attorney is going to be able to easily argue that one away. But it's the situation with Kyle Rittenhouse is nothing more than a politicized stunt in order for them to further their anti-gun legislation. And let me tell you, folks, there is a lot of anti-gun legislation that has been brought up for the 117th Congress this year. Oh, Lord, is there a lot. The biggest one that's got a lot of people talking is House Resolution number 127 of this year. It was proposed by Representative Sheila Lee Jackson. Imagine that. On January 4th, 2021. We will take a short break here, and we're going to get into that when we get back.
Jason Reeve, the host of the American Gun Show here, inviting you to listen to our new show, Current Pulse. Join myself, Mina May, Nick Messer, and Samantha Reeve as we discuss top stories, political hypocrisy, and even stories you might not have even heard about. It's an open discussion of facts, not fake news like CNN and MSNBC. Join us on the weekly podcast, Current Pulse, right here on Spreaker.com or your favorite podcast provider. Are you a constitutionalist and fan of the Second Amendment? Then you need to listen to the American Gun Show, hosted by me, Jason Reeve, the voice of freedom. We talk about laws, training, and everything in between. Find us on the Firearms Radio Network, iHeartRadio, and every podcast platform. The American Gun Show. Our rights, our fight.
All right, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking around after our little small obligatory break there. So I want to dive into House Resolution 127. The Sabika Sheikh Firearm Licensing and Registration Act. And it's exactly what it sounds like. The bill will be instituting a licensing system for you must have a license to even own a firearm or ammunition, and that you must register your firearms. It will amend Chapter 44 of Title 18 United States Code by adding at the end the following: licensing of firearms and ammunition possession, registration of firearms. Section A in general, the Attorney General, through the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, shall establish a system for licensing the possession of firearms or ammunition in the United States, and for the registration with the Bureau of each firearm present in the United States. With the registration system, these are the things that you must disclose. It says, required information under the firearm registration system, the owner of the firearm shall transmit to the Bureau the make, model, and serial number of the firearm, the identity of the owner of the firearm, the date the firearm was acquired, and where the firearm is or will be stored. If the bill gets passed, you have 3 months to comply. If you acquire the firearm after the bill becomes signed into law, then then at the point of purchase, this information must be provided. All right, on the firearm, as far as the registration. And the Attorney General will establish and maintain a database of all firearms registered. And the Attorney General shall make the contents of the database accessible to all members of the public, all federal, state, and local law enforcement authorities, all branches of the United States Armed Forces, and all state and local governments as defined by the Bureau. So they will essentially be putting together a list of everyone who has firearms, and their addresses would be would be public information. You can simply go on the website and start looking at who your neighbors are who own guns. Or, I don't know, criminals could just go on the website and start researching the homes they want to break into in order to steal firearms. Because all the firearms have to be registered, and the addresses at which they are stored are kept as public information. We already know that criminals have no concern for the law at all whatsoever. And Jason, help me out. I know you're there. I know you're listening. Throw it up in chat. What's the statistic for the legality of firearms used in crimes? What percentage of crimes involving a firearm are actually legally owned firearms? I know you've got that on the top of your head somewhere. I'll wait for it to pop up. I'm going to go ahead and move on. But yes. Now, also part of the bill, you must get a license to own the firearm, period. Not that you need to get a license to get out there and carry the firearm, not a license to conceal the firearm or anything like that. Any firearm, you must be licensed. Not only must it's $800. Okay, thanks. Less than 3% of crimes involving firearms are legally owned and possessed firearms. 97% of crimes involving firearms, that firearm is stolen. The person who isn't supposed to have it. The mere fact that they have the firearm, or the way they obtained the firearm in a criminal manner. They committed a crime before they even committed a crime with the firearm. They committed a crime to obtain it. Okay? So now you have essentially just given these kind of people a list of where all firearms are, and not just a list of where they're at, but what they are. They can pick and choose. No, I don't want to go over there and get that high point. I want to go over there and get that SIG. Yeah. That's essentially what House Bill 127 does. It generates a comprehensive list of what firearms are where, how many of them, and you can just look it up you'll be able to just look it up online. And then, and here's the reverse. Let's say the criminals aren't looking to actually steal guns. Let's say they're looking to steal everything else. Well, they can look and say, oh, they pick a house that they want to break into. Well, you'll be surprised how many people are going to comply, because if you don't get a license and you have one of those firearms, it's 15 to 25. If they pass this bill, if you have a firearm, if you own an AR-15 and you don't register it and you don't have the license for it, it's a $75,000 to $150,000 fine and 15 to 25 years in federal prison. Yeah. So if they actually pass it in its entirety, this will essentially, for all intents and purposes, abolish the Second Amendment without actually abolishing it. So, in order to obtain said license, you must be 21. After applying for the license, you must go through a criminal background check, which we've already been doing. That it actually says we use the NICS system in order to do the background check. So you got to pass a NICS check, which you have to do that every time. Why this is even in there, I have no idea, because the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act instituted the NICS check every time you buy a firearm, period. You go to purchase a firearm, what is it, the 4473, you got to fill that out, and so they can do the NICS check? You're a lot more versed on this, Jason. This is kind of your little world that you tend to exist in, so I tend to rely on your information a little more. But yeah, like, we're already doing NICS checks, and we're still having a problem. So that's obviously is not a solution. The next thing you must do, you must undergo a psychological evaluation conducted in accordance with paragraph 2, and the evaluation does not indicate that the individual is psychologically unsuited to possess a firearm. And you must also complete 24 hours of Attorney General approved training. And so you have to have, and there's multiple licenses. That's just your standard firearms license. So you need that for a shotgun, you need that for a hunting rifle, for a handgun, any of that stuff. Like Jason just said in the chat, it's been a federal law since 1997. All guns purchased from a FFL, which is a firearms dealer, they must do a background check. Period. Background checks are getting done on every purchase from a firearms dealer. Okay? Period. Been that way, like Jason said, since 1997. Okay? Going back to HR 127, you have to have a separate license if you have antique firearms on display in your house. You know, that non-functioning musket that you thought was really cool that you bought at the flea market somewhere? So you took it home and you hung it on your wall with some, maybe some deer antler style hooks or whatever. You have to have a license to own that and have that on display. Yeah, that's another $800. You need an antique firearm display license. And in order to get that, you got to go through the exact same hoops that you have to jump through in order to get your regular firearms one. And then they have a military-style weapons license. All the same stuff as before. You got to go through a psychological evaluation. You can't have any mental illness, disturbance, or diagnosis, including depression, homicidal ideation, suicidal ideation, attempted suicide, or addiction to a controlled substance or alcohol, or a brain disease, including dementia or Alzheimer's. They can deny you your license so you can't own a firearm. They go on to define later on. Oh, I forgot about this too. And you must hold liability insurance for your firearms. You must have an insurance policy that insures the person against liability for losses and damages resulting from the use of any firearm by the person during the 1-year period that begins with the date the policy is issued. So, and then here's the real kicker part. Military-style weapons defined. The term military-style weapon means any of the firearms or copies or duplicates of the firearms in any caliber known as Norinco, Mitchell, Polytechnologies, Automat Kalashnikovs, Action Arms, Israeli Military Industries, Uzi and Galil, Beretta AR-70, Colt AR-15, Fabrique Nationale, FNFAL, FNLAR, and FNC, SWD M10, M11, M11/9, and M12, the Steyr AUG, Intratec Tech 9, Tech DC-9, and Tech 22, and revolving cylinder shotguns such as or similar to the Street Sweeper and Striker 12, a semi-automatic rifle that has an ability to accept a detachable magazine, and at least 2 of the following: a folding or telescoping stock, a pistol grip that protrudes conspicuously beneath the action of the weapon, a bayonet mount, a flash suppressor or threaded barrel designed to accommodate a flash suppressor, and a grenade launcher. A semi-automatic, and then here we go, a semi-automatic pistol that has the ability to accept a detachable magazine and has at least 2 of the following: an ammunition magazine that attaches to the outside of the pistol grip, a threaded barrel capable of accepting a barrel extender, flash suppressor, forward hand grip, or silencer. A shroud that is attached to or partially or completely encircles the barrel and that permits the shooter to hold the firearm with the non-trigger hand without being burned. If it has a manufactured weight of over 50 ounces when the pistol is unloaded, and a semi-automatic version of an automatic firearm. A semi-automatic shotgun also is also illegal if it has a folding or telescoping stock, a pistol grip a fixed magazine capacity in excess of 5 rounds, or the ability to accept a detachable magazine. Yeah. The only firearm that is allowed to have more than 10 rounds in it, according to this bill, is your 22 semi-auto rimfire rifles that hold 18 rounds. That's it. Those are the only firearms that are allowed to have more than 10 rounds. Handgun, shotgun. Shotguns aren't allowed to have more than 5. And 12, if I continued reading, they're banning anything, any caliber of a projectile, 50.50, so the 50 cal and higher. So, no 12 gauge shotgun, because 12 gauge is 50 cal. It's a 1/2 inch diameter slug. So no 12 gauge. 12 gauge ammunition, 12 gauge slug ammunition for hunting deer will no longer be allowed. That will be banned. The revolver, the Smith & Wesson 500 Magnum, that will be banned. You will not be allowed to purchase that particular ammunition. The 50 AE, should you have a Desert Eagle, in the 50, the great big old huge hand cannon, you won't be able to buy the ammunition for that. It'll be illegal. So yeah, and like Jason said, so basically every rifle or shotgun out there on the market you won't be able to own, and yet they still want to tell you, no, there's a limit to how many rounds a shotgun's allowed to have. Yeah, a shotgun's not allowed to have more than 5. If it's got more than 5 rounds, it's illegal. Yeah. And you're not allowed to have, like I said, and that's the other thing too. You can't have 12 gauge ammunition anymore either. I just read it. It says, semi-automatic shotgun with a fixed magazine capacity in excess of 5 rounds. It's on page 13, line 19. Let me try to find here. Let me scroll through and let me find the... No, there's no limit currently now, but the bill it will institute a limit. Yeah, it's perfectly legal for you to have them now. It's the bill that's banning them. I'm sorry if I portrayed that the wrong way. I was talking in the context of the bill, not the way it is currently. Oh, I apologize. That's not what I was trying to say. At all whatsoever. I was trying to talk in the context of the bill specifically, not the way things are currently right now. There's no limit currently on how many rounds a shotgun can have. Some states have some limits here and there for hunting regulations. For example, here in the state of Indiana, you're not allowed to have more than 4 rounds in the shotgun when you're hunting. But there's no, you can hunt with a shotgun that accepts 8 rounds. You're just only allowed to put 4 in there. But yeah, there's this is a restriction they want to add to the U.S. code. They want to make it so that Jason, you just bought a shotgun that holds 8 rounds. They want to make that illegal with this bill. I was trying to scroll through real quick, and find the part. Prohibition of certain ammunition. It says it shall be unlawful for any person to possess ammunition that is .50 caliber or greater. It shall be unlawful for any person to possess a large capacity ammunition feeding device. Unless you're a government employee, if you work for law enforcement or the government, then you're allowed to have it. But other than that, you're not allowed to have the large capacity ammunition feeding device means a magazine, belt, drum, feed strip, or similar device that has the capacity of or that can be readily restored or converted to accept more than 10 rounds of ammunition, but does not include an attached tubular device designed to accept and capable of operating only with .22 caliber rimfire ammunition. So that right there is how they make it so you can still have your .22 rifles that we all used as kids to go squirrel hunting with and rabbit hunting. You know, the very first rifle we learned to shoot. You can still have those. Those are not considered large capacity ammunition feeding devices. And whoever knowingly violates Section 92 D-1, which is the owning of prohibited ammunition or large capacity magazines, if you own, if you are caught with a 12 gauge slug in your home, which is a .50 caliber or greater, you shall not be fined less than $50,000 and not more than $100,000, and imprisoned not less than 10 years and not more than 20 years, or both. Congratulations. If this bill passes, 75% of the American population has just automatically become felons overnight. Period. Yeah. So when you get when you get on your Facebook and you see the memes about House Resolution 127 about how it's coming for your guns and so on and so forth, 100%. That's exactly what they're doing with this bill. They are coming for your guns. Period. ... End of discussion. That is 100% the point. One of the other things is the Supreme Court is expected to take up a case concerning the Fourth Amendment about police needing to get a warrant, and you know how that applies and how it doesn't apply. The Supreme Court will decide whether police can enter a home to seize guns without a warrant. Obviously, you know, the Fourth Amendment is warrantless searches of a person's home. Before an officer can come into your house, they have to have a warrant or probable cause. There are some limitations, you know. If a police officer's walking down the street and, you know, they look through the window of this house and somebody's being attacked and about to be stabbed, the officer can bust through the door and stop the attack because he's witnessing a crime. Or if he's walking by somebody else's house and he sees grandma clutch her chest in the living room and fall over, you know, then he can bust in the door and try to rescue grandma there if he believes that she's having a heart attack or in duress in some way, shape, or form. But the question that really comes into play as far as the Supreme Court is the community caretaking exception. And it's derived from a case in which the police took a gun out of the trunk of an impounded vehicle without first obtaining a warrant. They impounded the vehicle. It doesn't say in the article. This article's from Forbes. It doesn't say in the article, you know, what they did. the Supreme Court's already held that there is a community caretaking exception to the Fourth Amendment's warrant requirement because the police perform community caretaking functions. And those things are totally divorced from the detection, investigation, or acquisition of evidence related to the violation of a criminal statute. That's that whole protect side of the law enforcement ideal. Now, before police were, as far as their community caretaking, like busting into somebody's home without a warrant because they're trying to stop a crime, or busting into somebody's home to provide emergency aid to a person who may be ill in some way, shape, or form. Those are community caretaking functions, but those are rather immediate. They're actually witnessing something happen. Whereas when they got in the trunk of this car, nothing had happened. The only reason why they even knew that this firearm was in the trunk of a car was because they opened the trunk and looked in it. The community knew nothing about it. So they said that they did it because they were concerned that vandals may eventually break into the impounded car and steal any weapons that were in the trunk. Well, nobody knew the weapons were in the trunk except for probably the person who owned the vehicle. So that really doesn't apply in this situation. So, now we're caught in a bit of a catch-22 where we have to try to decide, is this something that police officers should be allowed to do or shouldn't be allowed to do? And this has major ramifications as across the United States as far as the red flag laws that exist in a number of states here in the United States. So we'll keep you updated on that particular bit of information as we manage to come across it. And on that note, everyone, that is another episode of Centerpiece. Have a good evening. Thanks for listening tonight, and remember, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Benjamin Franklin. You can reach me at www.facebook.com/centerpiece. You can also email me at centerpieceshow@gmail.com, or you can shoot me a tweet at centerpieceshow on Twitter. Thanks again for listening.